Hello, BookTube. I've mentioned before on this channel that I have an old friend who runs a church here in Boston. And for years and years, that church had a kind of basement jumble sale where parishioners would bring in all kinds of stuff, donate all kinds of things. Uh, and then eventually there would be a sale that would, the meager proceeds of which would go to offsetting some church expense or other, or maybe funding some church initiative or other. COVID, of course, killed that completely. The event, but not the donations. The donations kept going, including books, which my friend gets regularly dropped off like orphans at the back door of the church all the time. And they just accumulate in a room down in the basement. And he's forever telling me, you should come over and take a look at these books. They're just growing and growing. You could find good homes for them. You might be a good home for them. And he lets me fill, a box and just take it. It's not like I contribute to the church in many other ways, so I don't have to pay per book, although I'd be willing to do it. He won't hear of it. He absolutely won't hear of it. And hasn't wanted to hear about it for years. Continually citing tiny little things that I do for either the church or for some of his parishioners, individually, that he thinks deserves some sort of recompense. I swear. It's silly. It's absolutely silly. And so it was a bright, pleasantly warm day today, and quite a few little obnoxious irritations have been cropping up all morning for me, and just sort of shortening my temper. Those things, they don't know each other is happening, but they build on you. I'm sure you've had that happen. So I decided to take him up on his offer and just go over there. Just go over and visit for a bit. And even look at the books. He loves to talk. He loves to just sit there and listen or talk to me about the books as we're going through them. He calls it a little seminar. And who knows? I thought maybe I'd find one or two things. And I was still a little bit resentful while I was over there. I was still a little bit, giving him a hard time, saying, why on earth are you doing this? You don't need to be this generous to me. This is not necessary. And he stopped me at one point, put his hand on my arm at one point, and said, these books are going to be thrown away. I'm offering you to take for free any of them that are the slightest bit of interest to you. I will provide you with the box, and I will also provide you with transportation back to your door, and your driver will be my sacristan, who is a very handsome, very muscular young man. So, what exactly are you complaining about? It was one of those, road to Damascus moments where I realized, oh yeah, what am I complaining about? So we went through the books, and I got a bunch of books that I want to show. I got a big stack of books. Lots and lots of them are duplicates. Lots and lots of them. I just couldn't stand the idea of them being thrown away. Maybe I'll reinforce some of them and make them just battered old reading copies, things like that. Maybe I'll find somebody that I can give them to, somebody who might want them. Well, I thought we'd go through them together just for the fun of it, because I did get a ride back here, and that was good, because that hike would not have been pleasant. Today has turned out to be warm, actually warm, which when I'm sitting here on the fainting couch doing my work, I say, bring it on, more and more. Go up and up and up in temperature until Frida is uncomfortable, we're nowhere near that point right now. But when I'm walking around outside with a load of books on my back, that's different. So I'm glad I got a ride. So a lot of the books that I'm going to show you are things that have come up on this channel in one way or other. Either I've shown you, individual copies from other mail hauls, or they've come up in tags. I'm pretty sure everything in this little haul has shown up on a tag one way or another. But we'll go through them and see what kind of fun we can have. The first one is an old Signet classic of Sinclair Lewis's novel Elmer Gantry, which I don't know how much Sinclair Lewis is read anymore. These old Signet classics are kind of nice, and they are pretty durable. This will certainly stand a read or more than one read. And I don't think I have any Sinclair Lewis. When I saw this, that was my first thought, is that I probably don't have any of him. It was kind of ironic for this to be given to me by a priest in the basement of a church, because this is all about fundamentalist American religious chicanery and hypocrisy. And I have heard Sinclair Lewis has never really ignited for me. I know that he's brilliant because I've heard it from way, way too many people whose opinions I trust. Maybe a reread of Elmer Gantry is in order. Maybe that is the case. Just the other day, I think it was yesterday on Twitter, I saw somebody brought up this book in light of its first line. The first line is Elmer Gantry was drunk. And it's about a huckster named Elmer Gantry who has no religious faith whatsoever and yet becomes a successful religious manager and also a successful religious demagogue on his own, even though he himself is completely empty of religious convictions. He's a total, what we would now call a grifter. And the book, it came out almost 100 years ago, and it sparked a huge outrage. It was banned in Boston. The person who posted that on Twitter then went on just a bit. They weren't being pretentious. They went on just a bit about what a terrific novel this is, and they got some responses from people saying, yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, loved it. And I did not have that experience when I read this book and then I taught parts of it. But I think it's clearly time that I went back and read this thing, and so now I've got a paperback copy to do that. Then this next one, also a paperback copy. This is in rough shape. I will have to reinforce this. But I couldn't leave it behind. Something about its cover design spoke to me. This is Noah Gordon's historical novel, The Physician, which is set, when is this set? I don't know if the back cover is going to tell me. It's set centuries ago, though, in the near Middle East. And in part, it is the full story of this particular main character. But in large part, all throughout the book, I mean, it crops up over and over again in the big set piece scenes. Over and over again in the book, it's also about the limitations of medicine at the time. This young man becomes a physician, but that has very little practical application. But this thing is sort of falling apart. I will have to reinforce this. Maybe I'll look and see if I have it already in this edition. I know there was a later UK import to America that did not have quite the cover appeal of this one. So I'll have to look and see. I might have The Physician in some form or other, in which case I could spare myself the trouble of reinforcing this one. Then this next one, I read this a long time ago and quite enjoyed it, and I've never seen it since in this particular, what is this, Del Rey? Yes, Del Rey edition. So I grabbed it for free. I grabbed it. This is by Elsprague de Camp and Fletcher Pratt. Which is a weird combination because Elsprague de Camp could easily make the cut for a booktube event about garbage, about trash. But Fletcher Pratt certainly could not. And this book I wouldn't call trash. This is The Complete Enchanter, which is very much like Lest Darkness Fall, the novel the short story, and then the novel Lest Darkness Fall, in which a man from the present time travels back to the past, and his knowledge or whatever allows him to get to dig in, to roll up his sleeves and get to work on the past. He has a huge advantage. This is the same thing, only the contemporary character cracks the code of mathematics behind magic and is able to go to an enchanted realm. So it's the same kind of story as Lest Darkness Fall, only the destination is not historical. It's not science fiction, really. It's kind of a weird take on fantasy. I remember really, really enjoying this back when this first came out. This must have been the 80s. 1976 is when this edition came out. And that's probably around when I read it, then or in the early 80s. So when I saw it in relatively good shape, I mean, if I reinforce this, it'll certainly take a read. I grabbed it. We'll see. Let's see here. Okay, this next one also in a little bit rotten shape, but I'll reinforce it, or maybe I won't. It's free. Maybe I'll just read bits and pieces of it, and that'll be the second life that I wanted it to have before I throw it away. I just couldn't bear to see some of these things thrown away. I think they deserve homes. But I have this one. I have an ebook of this, and I have a bigger trade paperback of it. But this is John Barth's masterpiece, The Saltweed Factor. Look at the shape this thing is in. I can fix it. I can make it really, really durable. And I'm pretty sure that I have a couple of other mass market copies of this thing. This is a great American novel. This is one of the great novels of the second half of the 20th century. It's not known today. I don't think it's in print today. John Barth, unfortunately, is not known today. And also, unfortunately, for the last 30 years of his life, he has been diluting his own legacy. In the same way, when you reach a point where your new book has 3 exclamation points in the title, and no one has made you not do that, then you reach the same point as Joseph Heller writing a sequel to Catch-22 for the money. there comes a point, I hate to say it, when a great author's pen ought to be taken away from him so that he doesn't do harm to himself. Uh, Unfortunately, that hasn't happened with John Barth, but we have Giles Goatboy, and we have, in my opinion, Chimera, and we also have this. This is indisputable. There's no doubt about this one. This is just a great novel. It's a historical novel about colonial era Maryland, the founding of colonial era Maryland. But it's also about a young poet, a knobby-elbowed, knobby Adam's apple young poet, who goes through one dehumanizing, coming-of-age, scandalous adventure and misadventure after another. It's hilarious, absolutely hilarious, and also the pious American folklore of John Smith and Pocahontas will never be the same after this book. It's very much time for a reread on my part. And maybe this will be the one. Maybe I'll just reinforce this, reread this for the one time that it's going to get to please another reader, and then release it into the compost pile. Maybe I will. But I couldn't just leave it there. Same thing with this next one, which the more I look at this next one, the more crazy my reaction was, because this is not something that is a forgotten book, and it had a huge print run. So I'm not saving this at all. I just grabbed it. This is that one of those oversized mass market paperbacks of Donna Tartt's book, The Goldfinch, which I remember liking. I think there are large parts of it that are overdone. There's no way it needs to be this long. But I thought there were large parts of this, in fact, far more parts of this book that were genuinely felt than there were in The Secret History, by far. It's a weird book in a sense that I have often brought up with Donna Tartt, and that her fans don't tend to like hearing me say, even though they can't refute the sense of it, which is that it's one of the interesting parts of this book. Those of you who don't know the story, maybe haven't seen the movie is actually a lot better than people give it credit, even though it stars Ansel Elgort Barada Nikto, or whatever his name is, who's got a well-deserved reputation as box office poison. But the story is about a boy and his mother who are at the Museum of Fine Arts when an explosion goes off. And a lot of people were killed, including his mother. And in the rubble, in the confusion, he grabs the little picture of the Goldfinch by an artist called Fabricius, I think. And he just keeps it with him. And it goes through all sorts of life misadventures. And one of the interesting points about this novel that I always make that Donna Tartt fans don't like is that it's a very disarming and not at all not charming, a very, very disarming experience to read a novel, especially something this long, that wasn't written by a human being. Donna Tartt is not in any functional sense a human being. I guess biologically, sure, but in the 21st century, we're told that's the first thing we shouldn't consider. In any functional sense of the term, she has never been a human being. She eats, she drinks, she smokes nonstop. But family, community, school, jobs, daily routine, none of the signposts of human life apply to her or literally ever have in her entire life. So, what is it that makes her an alien? She has human DNA, but I guarantee you beyond a shadow of a doubt that she has never even Googled to learn what bowling is. So, okay, she has, human biological cladistic ancestry. But there are vast things that she knows nothing about. She knows less about the real world than Queen Elizabeth II. And she writes novels, and they're very much from, if you take a step back and realize that, they are very much from the viewpoint of a visiting alien. And this, I think, is the most effective one. I don't know, I don't keep up with a lot of Tartt heads. They have sort of a locked community to themselves. I'm under the impression that the general map of the landscape here is that people consider that Secret History was brilliant, Little Friend was not, and this was. And that the idea is that we'll get a book from her in another 9 years or so, or 7 years or so, because she takes 10 years to write a book. I don't know what I think about that or how much I agree with that, but I think this is by far the most effective, approximately human book that she's ever written. So, and I found it in this, I could go to the bookstore and get this, and it wouldn't be in such a ratty condition. Part of me liked the idea that this was obviously read all the way to the end, You can tell that just from the spine. Someone read this all the way to the end, and maybe they died, or maybe they just don't keep things. They loved it and read it all the way to the end, and I kind of like the idea of having that book. If I'm going to reread this, I think I'd rather do it that way. I grabbed it. I know that's a flimsy excuse. It was just I was filling a box, and I had a bristling young man there who was going to bring the box to the car and drive the car to my doorstep. So I grabbed just most of the stuff that I saw. You would not have been tempted to grab, but I just grabbed whatever. Like, for instance, these next couple are explicit duplicates. I don't only have the books here, the printed books here, but I have them in exactly these editions. I just couldn't bear to see them thrown away. I couldn't stand that idea. The first one is by Robert Sapolsky. This is Behave, in a brand new Penguin trade paperback. Sweeping sociological study of his that I have praised endlessly. I ranked it number 1, I think, on my year-end Steve Reads nonfiction list for that year, long before we were talking to each other. I've also praised it endlessly on this channel. It's come up in library tours and whatnot. It's one of those nonfiction books that has a revelation and a fascination on every page. Every page has something like that. Just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And I already have a trade paperback of this, but I couldn't just leave it behind, so I grabbed it. Maybe one of you wants it. The same thing with this next one. This next one I couldn't leave behind. This is Vikram Seth's A Suitable Boy, a sprawling 1,500-page novel that I just love, absolutely love it. And I have the ebook, and the ebook supplants the trade paperback that came out 30 years ago or so, 25 years ago, that is lovely. It's this trade paperback. This came out, when did this come out? When did this paperback come out? 2005. 2005, this came out. So almost 20 years ago. And it's a big honking thing, but this is in beautiful condition. I already have this, and I already have it in this trade paperback. No one sees the books in that basement other than me. And I know that same muscle-bristling, handsome young man who drove me to my door is perfectly happy to drive these things to a reclamation center or a dump or wherever you can legally bring them. I just couldn't bear it. That's all. I couldn't bear it. At least this next one has a slight justification. Not much of one. I know this book backwards and forwards. I have plenty of editions of it. This is Brideshead Revisited. This is one of those Back Bay book editions that Back Bay Books came out with the uniform editions of all of WA. And you still see them in bookstores. I think these are the current edition in bookstores. This has seen better days. This thing is battered, but this is that Back Bay edition of Brideshead Revisited. I absolutely love this novel. I've done I don't know how many read-alongs of it. I recommend it all the time. And I have the old trade paperback with the stills on the front and back from the miniseries with Jeremy Irons and Laurence Olivier. And I have a hardcover, and that's I think the American original hardcover with the fountain artwork on the cover. And I have the ebook in a couple of different formats, but I grabbed this. I grabbed this. I don't think I've ever had this paperback. That's the best I can do for a justification. This next one is one of the only things I got. The Complete Enchanter doesn't require a justification. I legitimately like the book. It's time for me to reread it, and I don't have a copy. It doesn't need a justification. And this next one doesn't either. This next one is one of those rare things. I'm sure if you go thrift shopping or charity shopping or whatever, you know the phenomenon I'm talking about, where you will see all the stuff that you expect, and then every once in a while you'll see something you absolutely don't expect. You have no idea what it's doing. And with all the James Rollins paperbacks, you'll see finds like that all the time on Noah's channel. Everyone who reads it must converse. He has a knack for finding such gems. And I found one today. This is something I've never seen before. Who is this from? This is from Broadview Books, and this is called Charlemagne's Courtier, The Complete Einhard, edited and translated by Paul Edward Dutton. This is the complete works of Einhard. Was a kind of a well-to-do sponger who attached himself to the court of Charlemagne and wrote a great book. He wrote a fantastic biography of Charlemagne that is partisan, yes, of course, because they were friends, very good friends. Charlemagne trusted him, but also fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I wrote about it once years ago. I had no idea that a book like this even existed. What have we got here? What Einhard meant to do for Charlemagne, Paul Dutton has done for Einhard, and more. Charlemagne's Courtier brings together a magnificent stock of images, illusions, and texts. Virtually every early witness by or about Einhard, who led a fascinating life. Fascinating. Not just professionally, but because he was a doer and a shaker in Charlemagne's court, responsible for major works whose ruins you can see today, but also personally, which is very rare for the time. We know a lot about his personal life, or at least we think we do, about his relationships with his wife, of the true love that he felt for his wife, and also the huge amount of autonomy that he gave her in a society that wasn't exactly known for that. And invites us to reflect upon the greatness of Charlemagne's diminutive biographer. He's rumored to have been a small, squat man. To the extent that it is possible, after 1,200 years, to flesh out this eminent Carolingian artist, statesman, and mythmaker, every student now has excellent tools at hand. In translating and commenting, Dutton has unveiled a scattered treasure with care and circumspection. He and Einhard give us much to learn, ponder, and marvel at. That's from a professor at the University of Chicago. I can't wait to dig into this. Einhard's book on Charlemagne is fantastic. I love it. It is one half of a Penguin Classic. Penguin Classic used to have a book, Two Lives of Charlemagne, and I think Einhard's book was one of those, and immensely enjoyable even in English. I can't wait to get to this. A scholarly work on Charlemagne's biographer Einhard, sitting in amongst all the rest of these books in a box in a basement somewhere. It's going to be a delight. Now, when I saw this with an extremely academic subject, a work of academic translation, this is not meant for the general audience. No general audience would even know what to do with this. Although they would like Einhard's own book in English. You would like his own book on Charlemagne. I immediately thought this is an ex-school copy, so I scrutinized it for highlighting. Got to do that with books like this, or you'll be unpleasantly surprised. And there isn't any. This was just dropped off. Fantastic. Then we'll finish up with two hardcovers that are both biographical, and I had to get them both. One of them is kind of a find. One of them is this. This is Nancy Milford's book, her biography of Edna St. Vincent Millay, which I've had many, many times. Never had one in this shop-worn shape. Has the decal edges, and it is fantastic. It is even better than her biography of Zelda Fitzgerald. It's just a sumptuous, amazing work. And it was on my mind anyway before I went to this church basement, because I just read a review of Rapture and Melancholy, which is a new collection of Edna St. Vincent Millay's diaries. And I read the last Edna St. Vincent Millay biography and a couple of letter collections, and all they made me do is wish that I still had this book. Rapture and Melancholy, I thought, was a tremendous work of careful editorial scholarship, but I didn't keep it. Why would I? Why would I keep it? I would rather that someone as careful as Milford go through that raw material and work it into a biography than read the jottings themselves with sometimes incomplete or inconsistent footnotes. I didn't keep it, but the appearance of that book, of Rapture and Melancholy, is causing lots of really good critics to write about Edna St. Vincent Millay, and I don't want to lose those pieces. Now I have a place to put them. I didn't just get this as a receptacle for those pieces. I got it because every time I have it, I give it away. And I saw it today and saw right away, oh my, you don't have that. So now I have a copy. And the next biographical thing is kind of a find. I have this in a trade paperback, and it's a pretty stiff trade paperback. The binding is pretty bad. I would estimate just 2 dots of glue, and not very good glue either. It's not meant to be read, much less lovingly reread. And every time I go through that thing, I think, well, okay, it's not meant to be reread, but you're never going to find a hardcover. And then I did. Today I did, for free. And it's this. It's A Moment's Liberty, which is the abridged Diary of Virginia Woolf. In a hardcover. This is an ex-library copy, but I can get, you take the plastic dust jacket covering off. This thing is stuck to the paper dust jacket of the book. So what you do is you take this plastic covering off the book carefully so that you can put it back on. You take the dust jacket off the book, you lay the dust jacket on a flat surface, and you work to get this sticker off. Then when it's completely gone and you've cleaned it up and you've smoothed it over so that there's no trace of it left, then you carefully put the plastic covering back on the book, and no one would ever know to look at it. But I don't want that staring at me on my shelves. So I will do that. I will go through the process of that. And this thing will take many rereadings, which is great. That makes it a find, really, because I go back to this book a lot. I like spending time with Virginia Woolf. Her diary is a weird, often wonderful place, thoroughly human, but you still know that you're in the presence of genius. I like it. I like spending time with her. So this put a smile on my face and occasioned a long digression to my long-suffering friend. But anyway, that was sort of impromptu used book haul. It wasn't completely impromptu. I needed a pick-me-up. So I would have wanted at least to Zoom chat with my friend anyway, even if I didn't go over there. But I'm glad I did. I rescued a lot of these books. They'll be here until I could find a home for them. And some of them are for me. So we have Moment's Liberty, the shorter diary of Virginia Woolf. I will fix this. I will get that off there in no time at all. We have Savage Beauty, a great biography from the 20th century, the greatest biography, the final word on Edna St. Vincent Millay. We have Charlemagne's Courtier, which is a reconstruction of all that we know about Einhard. Amazing. Never even knew such a book existed. We have Behave by Bob Sapolsky, sort of a treatise on human beings. We have Brideshead Revisited, of course, by Evelyn Waugh. This is in a trade paperback that I've never owned and do not need. We have A Suitable Boy in a beautiful trade paperback. You've got Vikram Seth there. Make sure you can see these as I'm piling them up. We have one of these taller mass market paperbacks of The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. We have The Saltweed Factor by John Barth, one of my favorite contemporary American novels, but I don't know how long this edition is going to last. We'll see. We have The Complete Enchanter by Elsbrey de Camp and Fletcher Pratt, which, is terrific fun. I've read a lot of both of them in the meantime. Who knows what my reread will feel like. We have The Physician by Noah Gordon in the old 1990s American cover. Again, in horrible shape. I probably should have left it behind. And Elmer Gantry by Sinclair Lewis, an author I think I probably need to revisit. And if that revisitation is entirely or even partly inspired by social media, well, what do you expect from a 20-something influencer? Of course it's going to be influenced by social media. But anyway, that was a whole nother wodge of books. How these coincide with my frequent perorations about how much I love ebooks and e-reading, I do not know. But a lot of you have responded in response to those perorations that maybe the best approach here is a little bit of one, e-reading, and a little bit of another, printed books. And that maybe it doesn't have to be a wholehearted Jesuitical split down the middle. That's probably right. At least that's what I'm telling myself to justify getting all of these books. But they were free. They were no effort to get back here. There's plenty of room here. I'm justifying it in any way that I can. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.